Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, back for my first video in about a month. Massive thanks to those who have been in touch while I've been away to ask how I am. Everything's sweet, I just fancied a break from the cars, which meant I had nothing to film. Yesterday I finally pulled my finger out and started going through the fuel system on MAUDE, my MOREDOOR Mk2 Escort, to do a bit of maintenance. And that's what I'm going to be carrying on with today. One of you who got in touch recently was actually asking about the fuel pump and the fuel pressure regulator that I'm using on MOREDOOR, so hopefully this video will be of some use to you. Now before I go and get MOREDOOR out and carry on where I left off yesterday, I need to go and get some carb cleaner. Unfortunately, my local Euro car parts isn't open on Sundays and Toolstation have stopped selling carb cleaner, which means I'm going to have to go and get financially raped at Halfords. Really nice day for a drive, but unfortunately I'm in Winston, the plastic Fiesta, because MOREDOOR is already in bits. How much? Well, that was painful. 35 of my hard-earned English pounds, but it'll serve me right for waiting till the last minute to buy everything. I should have got this yesterday when there was more shops open. Right, so here I am at the garage. Got MOREDOOR out in the sunshine, looking an absolute state, which is how any rat-look daily drifter should look. Still got the holes and dents in her bonnet. If you're new to the channel and you're wondering how those holes came to be in the bonnet, check the video at the top of the screen now. Now I probably will weld fiberglass those up soon, or should I just leave them how they are? What do you reckon? Tell me in the comments. Now before I crack on, I'll just give you an overview of all the parts I've got fitted to do with delivering the fuel to the engine. So we're starting the boot. As you can see, MOREDOOR is still running the original fuel tank. Now this car was originally a 1300 GL. I think the RS2000s have a slightly bigger tank, and then the South African and Australian cars have a long range tank which is even bigger, but this is a stock 1300 fuel tank. Now underneath the car you can see that the fuel pipe comes out the bottom of the tank, and originally that would go all the way along the chassis leg to the engine bay, but my one goes in through this hole in the boot floor and connects to the electric fuel pump that I've got inside. Now it's worth noting there's a guy on eBay that does this hardline fuel pipe. I got this from him, and it comes with the olive and the fitting so that it screws right into your tank, and it comes pre-bent here, and then the rest of it is just straight to run all the way to the engine bay. As I said, I'll leave a link to the eBay listing for this fuel pipe for anyone who's interested. Go and check that out. He actually does two bore sizes. One of them's listed as being for like RS1800 Mark IIs. I don't know if originally they had a larger bore fuel pipe, but I went with a larger one anyway. So back in the boot now, and that fuel pipe comes in here, connected with this rubber bit of hose with a Jubilee clip, and then that just attaches into the back of the fuel pump, although this bit here is a fuel filter which is replaceable. I replaced this yesterday. It's really simple. Just undo the Jubilee clip here and then just unscrew the filter from here and then just screw the new one in. Now this is a solid state facet fuel pump, really cheap. When I first put an electric fuel pump in this car, it was still running a crossflow, and this was just a temporary thing really because it was so cheap. I didn't really think it would last this long, but it's been in the car 3 years now and I've had no problems, so I've got no plans to change it, although I do have the more expensive facet fuel pump that used to be fitted to the Mark 1, but obviously the Mark 1's now running injection, so that's no good. So at least I've got that one as a spare if this one ever does die. Now it's really easy to wire up. There's two wires in the fuel pump, one red which you need to connect to a live, which I've got going through a relay which is obviously triggered by the ignition barrel, and then the other wire is just an earth which you can just attach to the body near the pump. I did used to have this earth attached with one of the bolts that are actually holding the fuel pump to the boot floor, but I found that when it gets rusty and you need to clean it up, it means you've got to remove the fuel pump to get to it, so I've just put it with its own screw there next to it now, so that's a lot easier to clean up when I need to. So the fuel pipe comes out the back of the fuel pump and then connects to the hard line that I was showing you a minute ago with a Jubilee clip, and then that goes along the chassis leg and to the engine bay. Alright, so moving around to the engine bay now. That hard plastic fuel line basically joins to this rubber bit of fuel hose with a Jubilee clip down there. And then this normally would go into the fuel pressure regulator, which is usually mounted here, but I removed it yesterday. So this is the fuel pressure regulator that I'm running on the Mark II. It's a Malpassi unit that I bought years ago. It used to be fitted to the Mark I when it was running carbs. It's got a glass bowl. Apparently the new ones nowadays have got a plastic bowl. But yeah, got this many years ago. It adjusts the pressure of the fuel by basically adjusting this nut here, and then this one locks it in place. Now the reason I've removed this from the car is because I'm going to take it apart and replace the seals, the diaphragm and the filter. Now here's the parts. That's the two seals, that's the filter, and this is the diaphragm. Now I've got all these parts from Demon Tweaks, and I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. Now another thing I removed yesterday is MAUDE's carburetor. Now this is a 32/36 DGV carburetor. Originally this carburetor had variable throttle flaps, which basically means that at half throttle only one would open, and then at full throttle both of them would open. But this has now got a synchronized throttle flap kit fitted, whatever they're called. So basically they both open at the same time. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. So it works similar to the DGAS carburetor, which is a 38 DGAS, which obviously has two 38mm throats instead of a 32 and a 36 like this one does. Now again, the reason I've taken this off is because I want to give it a little bit of a clean out and a mini rebuild, and I've bought all the parts for that from Burton Power, and I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video as well. Right, so what I'm going to do now is take apart the fuel pressure regulator and fit the new seals, filter and the diaphragm. Now before I take it apart, I'm just going to give it a clean on the outside with some carb cleaner. Now I've never changed the diaphragm on one of these before, but I have changed the filter and the seals. So I think I'll start by doing that, and all you need to do is unscrew this little thing at the bottom here, and then you can get the bowl off. Alright, so I've put the bits in this bowl to get them off the dusty floor. Now you can see that there's two seals in here, a small one and a big one, and that's these two seals here, which I got from Demon Tweaks. Really simple to fit, just pry that one out and put the new one in. I think I'll do that last actually, because I think I'm going to have to take these screws out of the top here and separate this part to get to the diaphragm. Now I'm hoping that I won't need to disturb these nuts, because I forgot to go and get my fuel pressure gauge that screws into here, which obviously allows you to adjust the pressure accurately. So hopefully I won't need to undo them too, but I've got a feeling I am going to. So I might just have to like count the turns or something, I don't know. Now to be honest, this diaphragm looks okay, can't see any splits in it or anything, but as I've bought a new one, I'll swap it out anyway. And you've got to be careful of this spring as well, make sure you don't lose that. Yeah, it's quite hard to film, but obviously you've got to trap the diaphragm in place in between the two halves of the regulator, make sure the holes are all lined up, and obviously make sure that the spring inside there is where it needs to be. But yeah, now I've got it all gripped in the right place, I can just put the screws back in. Right, so during the process of putting the diaphragm in, the old seals have now fallen out, so I'm just going to put the new seals in. Right, so I've given the bowl a thorough clean. There's the new filter, it's got a hole in one end which goes that way. And then you've got this spring that needs to go on there. And then just got to attach this back on now. There's a hole here and one around the other side for these to hook into. And then just screw this back up. And that is one rebuilt fuel pressure regulator. And I'm so glad that I didn't have to disturb those nuts, so hopefully the pressure will be somewhere near. So this can now be bolted back onto that bracket on the inner wing, and then I'll hook the fuel pipe that comes from the tank back up to it as well. I've given the carb a little bit of a clean on the outside with carb cleaner, and I've cleaned my bowl. Now I'm not going to be completely rebuilding this carb. It's just that every now and again I like to take the lid off, take the jets out, give them a squirt of carb cleaner, and just check that everything's clean. Sometimes you find like a little bit of sludge at the bottom of the float chambers. So yeah, it's just general maintenance. I did see something, this thing here, I might change the gasket to that because it's really easy to get to. And some of these levers on the side, I'm going to take these off because these are only for the choke, and I haven't even got the choke mechanism fitted. Yeah, it don't look too bad in here at all, to be honest, but I'm still going to take the jets out one by one and just squirt them through with some carb cleaner. Alright, so I've blown out all the jets one by one, just trying to keep everything as clean as I can. I appreciate it's not ideal doing it outside. When I was blowing it through, I did notice little specks of dirt coming out from these jets, so it's definitely doing some good. Right, on the other half of the carburetor, taking the floats out, they're just held in with a pin that slides into there, because I want to change this. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a valve that allows fuel in when it needs it, obviously determined by the floats sitting in the fuel. And the rebuild kit comes with a new one, so I'm going to throw that in. Right, one other thing that I can change on this half of the carburetor is the fuel filter, which is inside here, so I just need to crack off this bolt. Give this a spray out with carb cleaner. That's the new filter from the rebuild kit. I'm pretty sure this should have a copper washer on it, but there ain't one in the rebuild kit and there weren't one on it, so I'll have to just see if it leaks. It didn't leak before without one, so maybe it ain't supposed to have one. Right, so what I should do now is measure the float height, but I don't have a tape measure with me or any thick drill bits, which is another good way of measuring the gap. So I'm just going to clean this off with carb cleaner, put the two halves of the carb back together, and I won't do the screws up fully yet, and then I'll concentrate on getting the carb back on the car, and then maybe I can look up what the gap should be and run indoors and get a tape measure and sort that out. If not, I can do it another day. Got these idle jets on the outside, one either side, might as well clean them through as well. And while I'm on this side, I'll get rid of all this annoying choke mechanism. So much better without all that extra stuff on the side. Alright, I think that just leaves this thing now, whatever that is. I've got that gasket in the kit, so I'm just going to take that off and replace that. Some sort of diaphragm by the looks of it. Right, so apart from giving it one more spray with a carb cleaner, that's ready to go back on. But first, I want to put these new base gaskets on the inlet manifold. Now, the reason I've got two is because before, this rod here that connects to the carburetor was facing down a bit, whereas that should be as horizontal as possible. Probably because I had to make up this sort of adapter thing so that this bracket was the right distance away from the carb, which has obviously spaced it up a bit as well. But hopefully using these two base gaskets, or spacers, whatever you want to call them, instead of the one, will make that better. And as you can see, I got these from Burton Power, and as usual, I'll leave a link to their website in the description of this video. Alright, so that's the carb back on. I've still got to put the clip on this throttle bar thing, but I just want to start it up and check I ain't got any air leaks or anything. I have now snugged the top lid down for this test. I'll just run the fuel pump for a bit first. Yeah, so the pressure regulator's full up now, and that'll be filling up the carburetor now. Yeah, it seems to be running pretty smooth. No leaks. Just test for an air leak. Seems alright. No leaks from here. Right, it just started running really bad, and what I've noticed is that even with the idle screw all the way out, so it's not leaning on the mechanism at all, the flaps at the bottom of the carb, they're definitely not all the way closed. So something's going on there and holding them open. Maybe it's something to do with the base gasket spacers that I'm using. I'll just have to take the carb back off and have a look. So it turns out that is actually how the throttle flaps are on this carburetor. They are sealed, but they're not perfectly horizontal. So I don't know what's going on. I think I'm going to take the top lid back off now and just check that the float thing is hooked into the relief valve. Right, so I didn't see anything untoward when I took the lid off, but I've put it back on now and made sure all the screws are tight, and it seems to be running sweet. So all I need to do now really is check the fuel pressure and check the float height, which I'm probably going to do tomorrow at my other garage, and I'll put that footage in now. Alright, so almost a week has now passed, and I'm finally back round the garage to check the float height on the carb and also check the fuel pressure. I've already screwed my gauge into the fuel pressure regulator, but first I'm going to look at the float height, and I've already removed the screws to take the top half of the carb off. Now, one thing I noticed when I was editing the footage from the other day is that I forgot to put the washer on that valve thing, so I'm going to take all this apart and sort that out quickly. And I'm guessing that one of these two washers that comes in the rebuild kit will be the washer for that. And because hopefully this is going to be the last time that I take the carb apart for a while, I'm going to replace this top gasket as well. Alright, so I've got it all back together. It's got the washer on there now. Now, according to what I was looking at online, this float should be 35mm from this flat bit here to the bottom of the float. And I can already see there's a lot more than that. It's like 45mm. Now, by bending this tab, which hooks up with that valve, you can alter the height of the float. That'll do, 35-ish millimeters. Alright, so that's that all buttoned up, and I've hooked the fuel line back up as well. And now I'm going to start the engine and just see how much fuel pressure we've got. For this type of Weber, you don't really want too much over 3 psi. Now, I've just got the fuel pump on, and it's reading slightly over 3 psi, which is pretty sweet. So I'll just start the engine and rev it, and hopefully it can hold it at that pressure, and that'll be cool. Alright, so I'm going to remove this gauge now and just put this bung back in. There is a sealer you can use for fuel plumbing fittings, which I don't have, so I'm just going to use this gas spec PTFE tape. Should do okay for a temporary measure at least. And I'm going to remove this filter that I fitted last weekend and put some PTFE on that thread as well, because I noticed a slight bit of weeping out of here during the week when I was taking the car to work. And obviously you don't want to get none of this in your fuel system, so I always make sure that it's a bit further up the threads. So I'm just going to use this Stanley to get rid of the PTFE that's further down. That should be alright. Alright, so everything seems sweet. No leaks. No leaks from here either. Now there is one other thing I want to change today, and that's that clip. Now whenever I take the linkage apart, this is the one thing I hope I don't lose or break. Well, last week I dropped it and then I rolled the car out of the way just to have a look on the floor and ran over it, and then when I tried to bend it back it snapped. Luckily it's still usable, so I'm going to keep that in my ashtray as a spare, but I ordered a new one on eBay which has now arrived. I paid £10 for this clip, which I think is ridiculous, but it is good to know that they're readily available if I ever need to buy one. I'll leave a link to the eBay listing in the description of this video for anyone who needs one for their car. I might be taking MOREDOOR to a car meet later on, so I might change the rear tyres for some budgets. It's a ghetto street meet. Their second locations are usually pretty epic. I'm not going to be bothering making a video at the meet because my camera is just so crap at night. But if there is any decent footage, I'll put it at the end of this video, so make sure you watch till the end. But other than that, I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you thought it was shit, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe and activate the notification bell to be kept right up to date with any other videos that I post in the future. Make sure you check out my Facebook and my Instagram, and I'll leave the links you need for that in the description as well. Until next time, thanks for watching.